Welcome to the Linux Gaming News Punch episode 15, another weekly roundup. We're going to start by talking quickly about Second Earth. It's a currently free and in development strategy game from Free Lives, the developer of Broforce. Second Earth is a bit like a tower defense game. They say it's a base defense game where you basically play in real time as you go through levels facing off waves of bugs. It's got some pretty amusing Starship Troopers references, which is one of the reasons I like it. Starship Troopers is probably one of my favourite films, and Second Earth is extremely promising. It has some similarities to They Are Billions, which I've wanted to play for some time, but unfortunately it doesn't support Linux. And so Second Earth seems like it's filling quite a nice gap. Considering that it's so early on in development, Second Earth is actually damn impressive. It has challenging levels, a good style and atmosphere to it, and I do certainly want to know more. The most recent update to Second Earth adds in some pretty big new features. You can actually rotate buildings. There's a large enemy bug, which looks very much like the one from Starship Troopers. There's a bunch of new buildings, new weapons, and so on. There's even a bunch of new missions for those who already completed it the last time we mentioned it. Very, very interested to see where they take this, because they're currently claiming it's a prototype, but considering how much they've put into it already, I fully expect this to come into a full game at some point. The next game today is called Gunslugs Rogue Tactics from developer Orange Pixel. It takes an action platformer, mixes in a little stealth and tactics. It's something I briefly mentioned back in episode 4, as it seriously looks awesome. Orange Pixel have now said that Gunslugs Rogue Tactics is officially closing in on the release date. They're not giving a date just yet, as they've said they've still got a few major things to tick off. But one of the reasons that I'm pretty hyped about this is the enemy reactions, because they remind me somewhat of Broforce, and some of the action looks pretty intense as well. Unlike Broforce though, the levels in Gunslugs are procedurally generated, so you can play it through many times and have a different experience. Another reason is that not many have been able to make a good action platformer that actually gives you some stealth and tactical mechanics. So I'm really hoping it's good, and I'll let you know when that one's out. This next one will be unusually quick, as Stellar Jockeys have announced the next Brigador game named Brigador Killers, and I'm stupidly happy about it, as Brigador has possibly some of the best looking destruction possible in a twin stick shooter. The way you can drive around these neon lit cities in some sort of tank or mech unit, you can stomp all over everything and basically level the entire city to the ground. It's amazing. This is one of those times where more of a good thing is great. They've confirmed to me that Linux is going to be supported once again, so that's ace. Moving on, I have some software news for you, something that's actually really quite exciting. The team over at Unity have now officially announced full Linux support for the Unity game engine editor. It's moving out from an experimental state into preview, with it expected to have full support by Unity 2019.3, so that's before the end of the year. What's interesting though about this is their reasoning, and it's not people making games. While Unity is massively popular in the indie space, it's also used in film, transportation, manufacturing, and more. And according to Unity, the demand for Linux support in industries like that has actually increased. So thanks to that, making games on Linux is going to be easier than ever. Back onto some gaming news for a moment. The Colonists has now officially released for Linux. This is a city builder where you're controlling a bunch of robots who wish to become more human. That alone makes it sound quite unique, since most village or city builders have you control some sort of biological race. As you play it, you advance through 3 different ages as you build up your infrastructure for your colony, constructing roads, boats, transportation systems, and harvest natural resources like you would in other city builders. As the Linux release is coming a lot later than the Windows version, we're getting the best of it because it's had quite a lot of feature updates since the original release. It's now got a full map editor with Steam Workshop support. It also has a ton of other improvements to the maps. There's new buildings, transportation improvements, including the ability to elevate your train lines above water, which is pretty cool. The Colonist basically looks like a really sweet city builder with robots. Can't really go wrong with that. Now on to something a little bit different. It's not quite software news or game news, but according to Proton Database, the unofficial tracking website where people submit their reports on how Windows games work on Linux with Steam Play. According to it, over 5,000 titles now work on Linux with Steam Play. 5,000. That's just nuts. We've had same-day releases like Rage 2 working, some other massively popular games like Mortal also seem to work fine, as does Risk of Rain 2, Deep Rock Galactic, and tons more. Steam Play is basically filling a serious hole in Linux gaming, and the future is pretty bright thanks to it. But part of what makes Steam Play great is not just because you're able to play a lot of AAA games as soon as they're out. It also solves the back catalogue problem of people who switch to Linux or try Linux and lose tons of games that have never been ported. And that is obviously very important that they don't lose access to that, so Steam Play certainly does help with that as well. While we're on the subject of Steam, May's figures for their monthly hardware survey are out, and they do show a slight increase of Linux gamers overall. Keeping expectations in check though, it's not a huge change. It's a difference of about 3.7%. But there's a slight upward trend overall, so that's quite a positive note to end on. And that's all for this week. Join me again here around the same time next week for another bite-sized look at Linux gaming. Please do come along and say hi on gamingonlinux.com, where we have all the daily news, and I will see you soon.